All right, we're going to talk about statues and as idolatry or not, and euthanasia. So we'll start with the prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you for all the graces you've given us for our beautiful new church that's coming along, and may it be a blessing to every one of us. Thank you for all the people that are coming in here to learn more about their faith, to be able to be confident that the Catholic Church is the one true church, and there's nothing that we do that's against the Bible, and there's nothing in the Bible that's against the church. Except 2,000 years, we've answered all the questions. So keep us blessed, and let us have a beautiful week. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, statues. You know, when people ask me or say you adore statues, like it just does not compute. How could you adore something made out of plaster or marble or whatever, you know? So look at the next slide. That's one of the typical comments. Oh, actually, this is, there's a few statues and, of course, mosaics on the wall, stained glass. And, but to me, it just looks more than, we went into a Presbyterian church Saturday because my granddaughters had a music recital, and they had a speaker stand in the front and no decorations, and could have looked like a town hall. So I don't know, it's just not quite as neat as going into a church. Hey, Karen. And even my Jewish in-laws, when they go to Rome and they go to Italy and they go to Romania, they go to look at all the churches. There's a reason. Okay, so the typical Protestant stance is Catholics, some Protestants, Catholics worship statues because they're in the Bible. It talks about you shall not make a graven image or likeness of anything that's in the heavens, the earth, the water, or whatever. And one of the most famous books is Roman Catholicism by Mr. Lorraine Bettner. And he just goes on and on about everything Catholic and how it's bad. And he said, God has forbidden the use of images in worship, which is not true. You can't, that's not in the Bible, because you'll see God said, hey, make these cherubs, make these other things. So God doesn't condemn making of all images, just images that you would worship. So Karen, can you imagine going and worshiping and thinking that that piece of rock or marble is going to do something for you? No.
Even when you worship, like the crucifix, you're not worshiping that crucifix. You're worshiping what it represents.
Yeah, you're remembering. Jesus died.
It's crazy.
So, given the context, this didn't prohibit the Israelites against making images, because God told them to make. They made lots of images for the temple and for the Ark of the Covenant and so forth. You just can't make something graven. You can't construct something and worship it. So it made, Moses made the bronze serpent, the Ark of the Covenant, the cherubim, and he made these two cherub angels as part of the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. And by the way, cherubs were pretty mean guys. They weren't the little baby things that you see in the pictures. Cherubs had four wings and strong and multi-faced and everything.
So the ones that in the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah, those two. Yeah, the cherubim. Yeah, cherubim. So, and again, when the people were rebelling and saying, we don't have food, or we're tired of this, of the bread, of the manna. So God sent the snakes to everybody. And so when they were bitten by the snakes, they said, maybe this complaining isn't working. So they went to Moses, and God told Moses, make a fiery serpent, a bronze serpent, and put it on a pole. And everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live. And of course, that serpent on the pole is what the chiropractors use, right? That you see all the time, the serpent around the pole. Yeah. So veneration of images is like veneration of the saints. You can venerate George Washington or any hero. Doesn't mean you worship him. So the Seventh Council at Nicaea in 787 justified the veneration of icons. Before that, there was some of the emperors, and they were saying a lot of the bishops were going to say there's a controversy of whether you could have icons, statues in the church or not, or even the painted icons. And so they had to have a council to say, yes, because Christ became human, therefore, he made himself into an image like us. I mean, so it wasn't this supernatural God that is in the heavens and stuff. Here's an actual person, and you make a drawing of that person. That's not making an idol. It's making a drawing of that person or a statue of that person. So worship is not directed toward images. They're considered mere things, but under the aspect of leading us to God incarnate, to helping us vision saints and angels and Jesus and the Mother of God and so forth. That's St. Thomas Aquinas. He was a big guy. So we don't worship religious images. We express love and honor for the person represented by the statue or the icon or the picture. And people have the photos of their loved ones in their house. They don't worship those photos. They may even kiss a picture. So, by the way, that's the Pieta that's in Rome. If you ever notice how big Mary is compared to Jesus on this, and I had some people comment on that, why did Michelangelo make her big? Because he said that if he would have had her a little like she's probably smaller than Jesus, she would have looked like a little dwarf trying to hold this big body. So he had to make Mary a little bit bigger so the body wouldn't engulf her. Little side note, you can use at the next party. Okay.
Yeah, sure I will.
Again, venerating saints does not steal honor from God. I always talk about, if someone comes up to you and says, oh, your daughter did so well in school, or she made all the goals in soccer, or whatever, she did sing real well, she doesn't demean you as a parent. You get joy and honor when someone honors someone that you respect or have under you. When they honor your daughter, they're honoring you. You're the parent. You help her get where she was. Statesmen, statues, we honor heroes. It's also in Sirach 44. They're talking about honor to whom honor is due. Protestants have pictures of Jesus and Bible pictures in Sunday school for the kids, but they don't talk about that. Or even Scott Hahn, his mom was complaining about the statues in the church. he says, don't you have a crib scene at your house at Christmas? Aren't those statues? Are you worshiping that crib scene? No, nativity scenes. So it's always a good comeback. Bowing, kneeling or bowing before an image, and you'll not bow down to them. Again, if you're bowing down to worship, you're mostly bowing in remembrance or giving honor to the person that statue represents. And kneeling is just a good way to pray. It's not just because you're kneeling, you're not worshiping it. You're just praying. Or lighting a candle is veneration, symbolizing you're hoping that this prayer goes on. So, in conclusion, making a use of religious statues is a biblical practice. Our tradition has included statues and images, especially in the 1500 years prior to the Protestant Reformation. Zwingli was one of the Protestant reformers, and he said, I'm not going to do anything unless it's in the Bible. So he didn't see music worshiping in the New Testament or anything like that. So he would go, if they'd take over a Catholic church, they'd paint everything white, take out all the statues, no music, nothing, So the Calvinists were the Lutherans, some of the Lutheran churches do have crosses, crucifixes even, and some statues. Then the Calvinists the Presbyterians got a little more, they might have a cross, but they certainly wouldn't have any statues or stained glass windows with saints or anything like that. And then Zwingli and his group, like I said, and the Puritans, we have nothing there. We just go, it's white walls, that's it. So anyway, statues help us focus on an aspect of prayer or worship. Statue of Jesus on the cross, the crucifix can help us remember Jesus' sacrifice. So, any questions?
Music was a part of their ceremonies in the Old Testament. That's so weird.
Yeah, the tambourines and the horns and all that. But Calvin was looking at the New Testament. So he said, no, it's not in there. So it's interesting that today on the Catechism in a Year, it was over euthanasia. So I was thinking about bringing that here, but I don't know. I don't think we'd have time because he talks for about 20 minutes or so, but it was interesting. The Catechism in a Year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was today's Catechism in a Year was on euthanasia. So I added one more slide to my slides for that. Euthanasia. From what he said, Father Mike said this morning, that youth is like easy or good, and Asia is like kind of the word for death. So you have good death or easy death, which in euthanasia is deliberately ending of a human life. When someone is suffering from pain or probably at the end of a terminal illness or so forth. So the Catholic Church in the Declaration on Euthanasia defines euthanasia as an action or a mission. So I underline that because it could be something you're doing to inject something into somebody to help them die, or pulling the plug on them would be an omission, which by intention causes death, or in order that all suffering may be eliminated. So there's 4 types. There's active, which is direct administration of a lethal substance, and you're doing it mercifully, supposedly. So you're not killing them because you're doing it mercifully. Passive is taking away some treatment at the request of the patient, or when the doctor says, this life is not, he's not going to last, or he's on some type of what? Breathing apparatus or blood system or something like that that's keeping him alive.
Somebody who's just on a feeding tube.
Feeding tubes, yeah. So indirect refers to painkillers that may be fatal in an attempt to relieve suffering. And medical professionals, physician assisted, so a medical professional aiding a patient. So he's saying, okay, he hooks up all the injection things, but the patient doesn't. The patient pushes the button or pushes the so forth. I mean, that could happen, but I guess that in some states like Oregon, the professional could be the one that actually pushes the poison into the person.
So what if somebody's had surgery and like, say they have a massive heart attack and they keep them alive, but they're gone?
Yeah,
I mean, that's not, and so you take them off of the whatever's, I can't even think what it's called, but whatever the equipment is that's keeping them breathing.
yeah, the life-sustaining equipment. So, yeah, so someone has a heart, he's on the operating table and, he's got oxygen going to him. He's got the feeding tube. He's got a heart monitor going, so those three things going. And when I was at St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the priests that we had come in on Mondays when Father wasn't there was a priest and a doctor. And he and I were talking about that he wanted to go back to Vietnam after he paid off all his debts and study more about what is the end of life. How do you determine when someone is gone? Their heart could be beating, but their brain could be dead. Or their brain could be dead and, their heart's still beating. Or they're not breathing. Or, they've been unconscious for 6 months. There's been cases where kids have fallen in a lake and been down there for 45 minutes in the bottom of a cold lake, and they bring them up and they still survive. They come right back. So he said it's very difficult to get down to what is a person, when is a person dead? No brain waves. Well, everything else is still functioning. Maybe the brain waves will come back, or the heart stopped, but the brain waves are still going. So he was going to become a specialist in that to try to determine what is death.
At some point, I think they stop, maybe they stop the death that God intended by defibrillating them or bringing them back.
Yeah.
Whatever. So that's really,
yeah,
it's a tough question.
That's something that we'll talk about a little bit about the will. My in-laws had do not resuscitate for both of them. So, they're saying that they're not going to live very much longer anyway. And if they go into some type of arrest or whatever, let it go naturally, So that's something you would probably make sure your spouse knows,
Right.
how you feel about that. So we reject euthanasia. It's a grave sin. It's a crime against human life. Is intrinsically evil. There's very few things that the church actually says this is a grave sin. Adultery, euthanasia, murder. Yeah, we just went through the 5th commandment about you shall not kill, but it's really more like you shall not murder. So killing, there's reasons to kill, like we talked about with a judgment. You get instead of life sentence, you get death. And although the church doesn't say it's very good, it's still not killing. Or someone that has to go to war, or policeman or whatever. So any formal or immediate material cooperation is also a grave sin, where you maybe you don't actually push the buttons, but like that doctor, gets everything set up. So all the guy has to do is inject the stuff himself, and then he's dead. So, and even those who approve the laws in favor of euthanasia become accomplices and guilty of scandal. So, especially the guys that are doing all the abortion laws and things. So this thing pops down. Got rid of it. Okay. Sacredness of human life. We are created in the image and likeness of God. We're the top of God's creation, above the animals and the worlds and stars and everything. And God said that we would have dominion over everything. So we have a dignity that far exceeds the rest of creation. No matter what our physical or psychological condition is. So human life is sacred, and human dignity is the heart of the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill. And God's law prohibits killing of innocent life, and it gives us the absolute dignity of each and every person. And life is a gift entrusted to us by God. God is the master of life. Human life is sacred and belongs to God, not to man. God has authority to end someone's life, to call him to himself. And it's entrusted to us, but it doesn't belong to us. So we don't determine when life begins or ends. It's a creative action of God, and God alone is the Lord of life. So no one can claim by themselves that they have a right to destroy an innocent human being. So now we're in a culture of death, and this is from St. John Paul II. We are facing an enormous and dramatic clash between good and evil, between death and life, the culture of death and the culture of life. We're not only faced with, but in the midst of this conflict, we're all involved, we all share in it, with the responsibility of choosing to be unconditionally pro-life. And our throwaway culture, the real structure of sins that can lead to the performance of actions wrong in themselves for the sole purpose of feeling better and carrying them out. And confusion over good versus evil in our choices, giving rise to relativism. And so I looked up relativism again, just to make sure that I knew what I was talking about. Anyway. Euthanasia and assisted suicide are erroneous solutions to the challenge of the care of terminal patients. So first you decide they're terminal, and then you said, we're not going to do anything more of this. We're going to decide, like they pulled the plug on that girl in Florida, and her parents fought and fought. And they said, no, we decided that she's never going to come back. She's useless. So they pulled the plug. It's also a disregard for vulnerable people and the unborn. And that's a sign of a throwaway culture that's getting more prominence. So relativism basically it's how I feel. So that knowledge, truth, and morality are in relation to our culture, our society, and historical. So if our society decides that we can do euthanasia, and all of a sudden it's okay. If our culture says that having multiple wives or, is okay, then now that's okay. So these are people that are making choices relative to what's going on. That's why the church is for 2,000 years has never changed any dogma. If it's true, it's true. If it's true, it's not going to be true yesterday and not true today. So in relativism, you can have different moral norms. You say, oh, well, divorce is okay. There are no moral truths. And live and let live. If they want to have Satan dances in Congress, then that's okay because they have a right to have their Satan dances, or like some libraries would allow Satanists to come in and talk to the kids, stuff like that, and do dances in front of them. Yeah. Or allowing guys who think they're girls to compete against girls in athletic contests and go into the locker rooms and run around naked in front of the girls. Stuff like that. So we're called to be pro-life and work toward building a culture of life. We should bring that culture, the good news that there is an alternative. There's always an alternative to what this culture of death is talked about. We need to offer the love of Jesus to all that we encounter. If someone's like homosexual, just because they have an ideology that homosexuality is okay, we can love the person, but not love the ideology. So you have a right to life based on life being that we have no control over life. It's either we don't have the opportunity to destroy or discard life. Whereas right to life, that life is a thing we possess and we can do whatever we want with life. End of life decisions, there's ordinary and extraordinary means. Ordinary care is the basic care that improves life, and that includes food. Are you going to take away the food, the nutrition, the feeding tube? Are you going to stop water to that person, hydration? You're going to cut off the air. You're going to cut off the blood machine or the heart monitor. These are all fairly ordinary means to preserve life. So I would say cutting off any of these ordinary would be considered euthanasia. We have an obligation ourselves to accept ordinary care. So we can't say, okay, I don't want to have the feeding tube anymore because I know that that's going to kill me. So you can't do that to yourself. But in the case that, for some reason, your body can't assimilate the feeding tube, your stomach isn't working, your organs aren't working, then taking away the feeding tube would just probably cause less pain and wouldn't make any difference because your body can't absorb those vitamins and minerals. So that would be okay. So ordinary care can never be intentionally removed or deprived in order to end life. So extraordinary care is optional and legitimate to refuse burdensome, dangerous, or disproportionate medical procedures. Like overzealous treatment would be using a ventilator on someone who's clinically dead. And again, this definition of clinically dead still needs to be really determined with so many things that we can do nowadays. Resuscitating someone who's terminally ill and in terrible pain, you can do not resuscitate. Experimental and massive chemotherapy, expensive cancer treatments and stuff that have a 1% chance or 5% chance of making a difference, or 6% chance of extending your life 6 months or something like that. And it's going to cost you $200,000, cost your family that. The financial burden, something you could consider. So you need to weigh all these options, medical options, and the teachings of the Catholic Church. So, omissions, what is obligatory, what is optional? Mission of ordinary means is euthanasia. Again, the air, the feeding tube. If they're working, they should stay. When hydration or nutrition bring no comfort to a person who's dying, then again they can't handle it, so that you could take it off then. And maybe these pills or whatever, or the drugs don't really help that person, so you can do away with those. So really the nutrition, hydration is the main things. If it outweighs the burdens involved with the patient. Ordinary medical care is an intervention that is generally accepted as effective and not burdensome or expensive. So you have a duty to preserve life, even someone who can't communicate. So just because they're incommunicative doesn't mean that you could cut off everything. And children always have this divine image. If the patient is dying, we try reasonable means to sustain life. If the patient is not dying, then you must provide the ordinary care. Living wills are unnecessary and dangerous because they come into all these things to do and to not do, but it can't cover all the possibilities and ramifications, the expenses, and all the other intricacies that come into determining what you're going to do to that person or have done to yourself. So doctors are already free to withhold or withdraw useless procedures. You don't want to be kept alive by medications or artificial means. So what's an artificial means? Artificial means could be a drinking straw, or medication could be aspirin. So when they make up these wills, it's just really too complicated for our society now. So what you want to do is have a proxy. So again, have your wife, your spouse, or your aunt or uncle, whatever, that has your moral convictions. And if you go to Priests for Life, there's some documents there that you can write up and have somebody sign or whatever to say, this person is going to make all the decisions for me. Last notes. And this is what I kind of grabbed from the Catechism of the Year today. Even with imminent death, ordinary care must be continued. All right. The guy's going to die, so you still can't take off the feeding tube if it's not hurting him. You can't take off the air. You can't take off the heart monitor. And use of painkillers, this is interesting, even at the risk of shortening life, is legitimate as death is not willed. You're not willing someone to die with these painkillers, even though they might shorten that person's life. Even though it's but only foreseen and tolerated, it's not willed as either an end or a means, but only foreseen and tolerated as inevitable. So painkillers are okay, even if they do shorten their life, because what's left can make that person, a little more comfortable. So that's all right. So here's how the world sits kind of today. So you see Canada and Colombia, Australia, and even Spain. And the little blue thing, I think, is Luxembourg, Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, Belgium, all have active euthanasia. So you can go there and get yourself killed if you want. England is considering it. So passive euthanasia, where you refuse treatment or you withdraw life support, is available in the United States, Greenland, South America, all the light blue. So active euthanasia is illegal, but passive, pulling things off and stuff, is not really legislated or regulated. So in the gray areas, it's a gray area. They, they kind of let what happens in the hospital, I guess, be between the doctor and the patient. So if he pulls a feeding tube, then I guess that's passive, all right? And in Russia, you can't have any euthanasia, which is kind of incredible. It's being, it's coming out of a socialist state, communist state. So that was interesting.
Well, if you need to be euthanized, they'll take care of
Is what?
it. I think if you need to be euthanized, they'll take care of it.
Yeah, probably so. Russia, if you want to be euthanized in Russia, yeah, they'll probably help you out. Because they helped a lot of people out with taking care of whether they're going to die or not. Millions and millions of people have been killed in Russia for, the Communist Party and so forth. So any questions on that?
A
Huh?
lot of gray area.
Yes, a lot of gray area in the world. And, there's a bunch of states, Oregon, Washington, I think Washington, DC and stuff that are all going to this assisted suicide thing. So probably in the next 10 years, maybe except for Texas and Florida, they'll be, all over the United States.
Yeah, you talk about the relativism thing. I think that's what's happened with abortion. People have just accepted it because it's so common. But you see people who are supposedly, they'll call themselves devout Catholics, like the people in Washington, D.C. that are promoting laws to allow.
Yeah.
abortion.
Yeah, that is scandal, definitely, when the legislators are voting for abortion. And it's just very clever what Planned Parenthood did. They changed from we're pro-abortion, they don't use that anymore. They use pro-choice.
Right.
And they use health of the woman. And that's what they're presenting to the people. And so they're kind of making it easier for these people that are against abortion to say, yeah, we need to accept the right of the woman for her own health care. We can kill the baby, but, or it used to be, I don't know if it's in some states where if you killed a woman that was pregnant, that was a double homicide. But if you kill the baby, that's just, that's okay. So it's kind of weird. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Lucretia and Andrew, have a blessed week. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, teacher. Very interesting.
Yeah, good. We all learned something.
Okay, see you
Bye.
next Monday.